But just to say that the Connected Lives book actually brings together 29 case studies from at least 40 authors from different disciplines. And they're writing around the theme of families, households, health and care. And they come from different institutions across South Africa, as well as different universities and different disciplines, demography, psychology, anthropology, sociology. And it was really exciting to bring these people who actually work on similar issues into conversation and in collaboration with one another, which was one of the key things that we managed to accomplish in this book.
I mean, I really like the fact that we encourage people to write ethnography, including people who'd never written ethnography. So from their point of view, a paper, some of them come from a tradition of writing very formal papers where you do go introduction, literature, methods, results, 3.1, 3.2, and to actually see the freedom and the beauty of the material they're working from is just fabulous. You know, there's a real richness in that. And I think the richness reflects the different perspectives that the disciplines can bring to a topic too. So there's nothing predictable about a given chapter. It's probably worth noting that it covers the life course from before birth and deciding to have a family through to caregiving of infants and children and into adulthood, and then issues around gender through to a funeral and or funerals and cemeteries, and yet it doesn't take a standard this is a life course study either. It just picks up at every point the way in which households come together to provide care and to support each other and to support moments when households are under pressure or an individual family member is ill or weak or fragile. And so the kind of crises, you know, that one knows are happening all of the time, including around life events like birth and death, but also around, you know, the specifics of different health conditions and including the risks that living in South Africa creates for people, for families and for individuals.
Well, I mean, that's extremely important. What the book does highlight is the importance of caregiving that happens within the family and supporting the people who provide care within the family. We have some really interesting case studies, and just to highlight one or two right now, there's an interesting case study that looks at, we have a chapter actually on how men care. And as Lenore's already mentioned, we look at gender and care, and most of the time we think of women providing care, and this chapter is dedicated to the ways in which men also provide care, which is incredibly important, and very little has been written about this.
Yeah, I mean,
we also
No, I was just thinking, in fact, there are two specifically on men, because there's the how men care, where men step in to care for others, but there's also men and self-care, which is the one that's set in Limpopo. And I think that also what's so strong about the book is that we include chapters not only based on ethnographies of Cape Town, Johannesburg, Khayelitsha and Soweto, but much more broadly across the country. And so there's a richness in that too.
Yes. Yeah. So I suppose one of the big questions we'll always be asked is, why read this book? For me, there are a couple of answers to that. And one of them is that the book actually highlights the flexibility of care arrangements of households and of how people make family, and how these particular different arrangements, variety of arrangements, actually impact on care in their various ways. And also, as we've already mentioned, for me, one of the reasons of reading this book is actually to familiarize yourself with the emerging work of young scholars in South Africa, and knowing what scholars, especially young scholars, are writing and researching around these issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of things that flow from that, aren't there? And one is that there are relatively few venues for young researchers to publish their work. And relatively limited opportunities in general for South Africans, not just young. So you end up publishing in the global north, and then the global north reads it, and often the book isn't affordable, or the journal isn't affordable, or the library doesn't subscribe to it. So I think that it's really nice that we've been able to bring young authors into it. I think it has a real impact on people when their first article, because for many it's their first article, and it comes out and it's like, oh, I can do this, I can talk to people, and I can translate my work in a way that makes a difference. But it also encourages people to engage with that and with a wide range of voices, which has to be an essential part of building theory from the South. You know, I mean, there have been several books and articles over the years calling for that. But in proving or in arguing that point, people routinely go back to using the same old global north articles, authors largely not alive anymore. So, you know, you don't change anything, and to actually be able to pick up a book that is speaking to the complexity of everyday life and is breaking down stereotypes is really important. You know, I mean, you read the book and you can't ever again talk about, you know, the typical African family, right? Because there isn't one. You know, we've got, remember we mention it in the book, but remember in that meeting when people were talking about households varying in size from one person only to 29, and of all kinds of relatedness. And if you've got you know, if you can say, well, this is my household, not even a family, this is a household of 29 people, or of one. I mean, one is not a unit of care. It's an individual on their own. So that already breaks down. And I'm not sure that 29 is a unit of care either. So then the question is, well, what is the minimum to allow for care? New question.
Yeah. I mean, yes, and I suppose just following on that, which is you talking about households, but I want to talk about people who've supported us in this book, and that is the press. The HSRC Press, who were the publishers of the book, were incredibly supportive and did a fantastic job. And we already mentioned the beautiful cover. And Lenore particularly seems to be obsessed with the indexing.
The index is beautiful. Well, because it works. And the point is, what is the point of having an index if it doesn't guide you into a book? It ought to be a kind of summary and a way to find things. And this one's been so well done. So I do love it. I think it's a really good index. But the other thing is that, yes, the HSRC saw a vision of 29 case studies that were linked together by a continuing prose and theorising by us. And I think, you know, it's not a standard book in that respect. So I think that was really brilliant. And of course, the Centre for Excellence of Human Development, which is based at Wits, was really helpful too in terms of supporting some meetings. And we had hoped to support a in-person launch, and were supportive for some of the research that is reflected in the book also. And so that, and the willingness of the authors, like, you know, people just responded so positively, and that also has been really fabulous. And now what we've actually done is created a new resource so that people, because we will have on the web not only Nolwazi and Lenore talking with each other, but individual case study authors either talking with a still photograph or doing a video about their own case study. All of those things are little teachings aids too, so you can have them online and use them. And in that respect, I think it's really valuable. And I think that it's a valuable book in terms of providing a model of how we might go forward in producing academic material on the continent and beyond.
Just to add to that, one of the great reasons that we chose to go with the HSRC Press is that it publishes things open access, which will make it accessible to teachers in secondary school as well as universities for undergrad and postgrad teaching. And what's unique about the actual book format is that each case study can actually be taken as something to use in discussion in classes. And what we provide, Lenore and I, with each chapter is we provide the connecting text which situates and contextualizes the case studies.
Yeah, I mean, they're standalone. And I think having 29 standalone case studies and then the text when we're talking about households, families, health and care is really valuable, because it's something that anybody can read before a tutorial. If nothing else, you know, you can just pick it out and say, right, well, we'll read this one, and you can play with it. So you could actually pull out all the case studies around more middle class households in order to do a class on that, versus case studies that deal with rural environments.
There were so many opportunities. This was before the book was published, where I wish it had been published already so I could use it to teach the medical students in Rwanda. And now it has been, and hopefully there will be an opportunity to do that in the future. I suppose in ending this, one of the things we should highlight, as Lenore has done, is that there are these 1-minute abstracts from our authors, either in the form of videos or voice notes, which will also be linked to this video and on the website. And essentially, the last thing that I really want to say is about connected lives is that really at the heart of this book is how individuals, how families, how households in South Africa are actually connected, or in some cases disconnected through care.
No, that's right. And that's there in that wonderful cover, isn't it? But I mean, I also think how we all connected as a group. And so it was such a joy working with authors, and they were so responsive to build those case studies in a way we wanted. And it was just fabulous working with you. So this is a continuation.
Yes. Well, and it was fabulous working with all those wonderful authors who, yes, you will see in the case studies.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Enjoy it, everybody.
Yes, yes.